Thank you very much. If leadership is anything to me, it's about figuring out what you were brought on this earth to do and just doing it. I think your life leaves clues and you'll find themes in your life. And as you do more and more and more, you'll find a common theme in your life. And I found a common theme, and that was all centered around this horrific, too big to fail institution that we call a bank. And for me, I guess it all started 12 years ago. There was nothing that I wanted more than to work in an investment bank. Unfortunately, I got rejected from them all. And after getting rejected from them all, I then decided that I needed to go and study this science they call economics. And after 3 years of studying things that I knew weren't true, I got rejected from the banks all over again. And after getting rejected from them, I then spent another year doing a master's in economics. And after doing my master's, I mathematically proved what I knew wasn't true in economics. And I got another load of rejections from the banks again. So after a couple of hundred rejections from a bank, I decided to change my approach, and I knocked on the door and got a job as a tea boy from a company called TD Waterhouse, a stockbroking house. And after being the best stockbroker I could possibly be, I managed to get myself a job in the trading floor at a bank, at an investment bank. I got there eventually. And after working on the trading floor, I then met my wife, who was a banker, who I met in a bank outside Bank Station near the Bank of England. And after that, I worked as an investment banker, and about 6 years ago, I decided that I learned a few things about banking that I just didn't like. And so I decided to quit my job on that day, and I went around all the different universities across the world, presented at a couple of hundred of them, on things that I found out about banking that I thought were going to really, really screw the world over. And after presenting on those, I got ridiculed by economists across the world at all the different universities. And after 2007, I then got invited on TV and was asked to write books about it. And so this whole theme, there's some things that I'd like to do today. What I'd like to do is discuss with you about why we need to change the rules of banking. I'd also like to share with you what will happen if we don't change the rules of banking. And finally, I'd like to tell you how we can change the rules of banking and why that might be important to you. So here's 3 things that I learned and that I started presenting around the world and wrote a book on, and that there's 3 things which really caused trouble for me. The first thing is that you may not know this, but when you deposit your money with the bank actually becomes the legal owner of your money. It's not your money. The second thing that happens with a bank that most people don't tell you, and economists won't tell you either, and is that once the bank becomes the legal owner of your money, they can spend your money as they wish. And what they tend to do is spend it on things which are socially harmful. They tend to spend it on things like creating derivatives and products which add no value in the world whatsoever. They tend to spend it on things like getting people to buy more shoes on credit cards. They tend to spend it on things like pushing up property prices beyond control. The third thing that no one ever tells you, and the whole of economics never told me as well, is that banks actually create money. You may not know this, but when you took on your student loan, you just contributed to creating brand new money in our economy. When you go and take out a mortgage, that mortgage is not somebody else's pension. It's not somebody else's savings, even though economics still teach that at university. It's an absolute lie. They create brand new money every time you take out a new loan. It's brand new money. Banks have been given by government the license to create money. That's why we're in an economy whereby bankers dictate policy. So the way that money is actually created is that whenever I was taught at economics that the Bank of England creates money, and we're still led to believe that there's this printing press and it's recklessly printing like crazy right now. It's a complete lie. 3% of money is created by the Bank of England. 97% of every single penny in our economy has been created by a private bank. And here's the thing, it was all created as debt. So when you take out a credit card, you are creating brand new money. When you buy and sign a mortgage, the bank did not have that money. They created brand new money. And when you invest in derivatives, or you hear about things like Goldman Sachs ruling the world, yes, they do rule the world because they and the other banks create 97% of every single penny that's in existence. Now, why is that important? The reason that's important is because money is debt. And when money is debt, we have two rules that govern our economy. The first rule is that in order to have more money and to create this growth engine, this illusion of growth, we have to have more debt. If we want less debt, then we have to have less money. And that's the rules that we're playing right now, which is why the collective intelligence of economists, central bankers, and politicians can't figure out whether they want people to take on more debt or they want a recession. Because that's the only choice when we allow banks to create money as debt. So how much money have they actually created? Well, the UK banking sector has created £2 trillion. How much is £1 trillion? None of us can comprehend how much £1 trillion is. We talk about it over pizza nowadays, £1 billion, £1 trillion, bank bailouts. Well, let's actually conceptualize this in something that we can all understand. If I asked you, let's convert those pounds into seconds. If I asked you, how long do you think 1 million seconds is in time? If we go back from today, 1 million seconds, how long ago do you think that would be? Give a guess. 4 weeks? 2 days? 5 hours? Well, it is in fact 12 days. 12 days. Now let's compare that to 1 billion. So if we know that 1 million seconds is 12 days ago, how long ago is 1 billion? If we went back 1 billion seconds from today, anybody got a guess? Go on.
8 months.
8 months? 32 years. That's the difference between 1 million and 1 billion. Now let's have a look at 1 trillion. If we went back 32 years from now, we'd be 1 billion seconds away from today. How many seconds, how far away do you think 1 trillion seconds is? Come on, you're leaders. 32,000 years before humankind. That's how big 1 trillion is. We can't conceptualize that. We have given a special subsidy to banks by giving them the ability to create money of £2 trillion. And we wonder why banks rule the world. Now, it's okay, let's say that we can conceptualize, fine, let's give the banks the ability to create money. But what do they do with that money? It's a pretty big responsibility. Well, what they do with that money, as I said, is the vast majority, 8% of that money goes towards doing anything productive like supporting small business. 8%. 92% of all of that money is used to speculate, to push property prices beyond what we can afford, and to allow people to take on further debt and buy shoes on credit cards secured by their income, because they sure as hell aren't going to do anything productive with that money. Banks were originally created in order to redistribute money to the productive economy. By productive, I mean creating something of value, a business, whatever ideas you have. But only 8% gets redistributed. By allowing banks to create money, we have created the most unequal economy in the history of time. We get redistribution from the rich to the poor. We get redistribution from everywhere else to the City of London to pay bankers' bonuses. We get redistribution from developing countries to developed countries. Yes, every single penny in your bank is as a result of somebody else being burdened with debt. Because the money cannot exist unless somebody else takes on that debt. And that has stretched to the third world, to the developing world, and every penny in our bank account. Because we have outsourced and given banks a special subsidy to the tune of £2 trillion so far by allowing them to create money. And economists don't think this is worth talking about. Money is the foundation of all economic theory, yet they don't look at how money is actually created. They work off this outdated model. And all of our economists, politicians, and bankers are working off theories that don't exist. This is the biggest con in the history of mankind. Not only is it unequal, but it's completely unsustainable, because all the money goes to where the profits are greatest. So when governments are talking about redistributing money through tax, there's this massive force of 97% of the money which is being redistributed to whatever's profitable. Whatever's profitable. We can never contend with that. Not only is it unequal and unsustainable, but it's completely unstable. The reason that we have boom and bust. Economists have tried to create all sorts of crazy econometric models that make no sense to anybody. But the reality is that instability is simply this. In boom, we get everyone to take on debt. When everyone takes on debt, they spend it, the economy goes flying. Eventually, they can't afford it. When they go bankrupt, banks stop lending, the economy crashes. And that's simply because the only way to get more money into the economy is to get banks to lend more. We're never going to get out of this boom and bust cycle until we look at the very foundation of money. So what's actually going to happen right now? I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. I put it on YouTube a long time ago, and I started presenting around the world talking about it. The very first thing is, because money is debt, eventually people cannot afford to get that debt. If we want to grow our economy, we have to take on more debt. Eventually, when we cannot afford to grow in that debt, we end up in the scenario where the money doesn't exist. So therefore, the economy crashes, the banking system collapses. That's the first result. And a banking system collapsing, by the way, means 97% of every penny in existence will disappear. Do you think we can let those not be bailed out? We have to bail them out, because they are creating our money. So therefore, because the government will never allow the banking system to go bankrupt, the only thing is the second outcome, which means the government need to take on all that debt, bail them out, and eventually they take on the debt. Why? Because money is debt. It's got to come from someone's debt. So there's no coincidence that the government, their debt has exponentially increased. They think this is an accident because there was a war to spend, there was a pension crisis, there was every crisis, there was a poverty crisis. It's because they need to keep the engine moving, because they've outsourced the ability to create money to the private banking sector. So the next thing is we end up with credit rating downgrades and countries like Greece going bankrupt, and Spain and Italy and Portugal and Ireland and UK next, and France. Why? Because they're all taking on the debt, they can't afford to repay the debt, therefore the credit ratings get downgraded, they can't borrow the money anymore. So what's the next thing when the government are completely insolvent, like we're seeing in Greece right now? You just have to tax you. Because there's only two ways of getting that money that they need in order to bail out the banks, because they've outsourced the ability to create money. And the first is they borrow it. If the country can't borrow it anymore, they need to get it from tax. So taxes will just increase and increase and increase and increase until eventually we end up in the scenario where we either have 100% tax and communism, or whatever you want to call it, or we have to find another way to get that money. And what's going to happen when your tax goes up and up and up? Eventually is going to be riots, which is what happens next. This is guaranteed into the system. It's guaranteed until we question money. So what happens next? Then the central banks come in and they take on the debt. Now, when they talk about a bailout, it's not a bailout, they're lending money. It's debt. It's ways of creating debt to keep the engine moving. But what happens when the central bank comes along and you have more organizations like the IMF and the World Bank? Essentially, it's the ultimate question of democratic power. Democracy is being taken away because we're going to have rule by one big, ginormous organization. This is no conspiracy theory. This is happening. Or we simply change the rules. So what we've been doing for a very long time, for the last 5 years, 6 years ago when I gave up my job at an investment bank, my wish is that money is no longer created to extract value. Money is created to create value. And there's very simple ways of doing that. We've been talking about them for a very long time. The way that we've been doing that is as soon as I found out about the rules, we went on a roadshow, presented across 200 universities. I created a company that became one of the world's leading companies for training students who want to work in investment banking. We had 10,000 graduates of that program. At least one of them works in every major financial institution worldwide. And the way we did that is we taught them all the rules that they know, so that then when they're going into the financial institution, at least there's someone in that bank that knows how the money's being created, because none of the bankers know about it. I then worked with a not-for-profit. We drafted legislation in order to transition from an economy where banks create money. Worked with a non-profit organization called Positive Money, went on TV, did everything I could just to spread this message, the message about what governments need to do in order to get their way out. Wrote a couple of books on the subject. And then finally, what we're working on right now is we just decided, well, let's use business to make a difference. If the banking system's not going to put any money into the productive sector, entrepreneurs, businesses, then we created our own alternative non-bank, which we've been working on for the last 2 years, have a fantastic team to do that. And that was all about using online platforms in order to get more money for entrepreneurs and businesses outside of venture capitalists, outside of the banking system. But still, we need the government to make the ultimate change. My belief is that if we don't look at the way that money is actually created, then we are guaranteed unsustainability, inequality, and the opposite of stability. Unstable, thank you. When we question money, and when we look at money, and we're guaranteed to question it because this system ain't going to work, we can move to a place of equality, we can move to a place of stability, and we can move to a place of sustainability. Everything that we've created is a human creation. It's not a natural disaster. We can change this. We just need to accept that we need to look at it. My belief is also that TED was created to share ideas. I think this is an idea worth sharing, and I'd like any support that anyone could give in order to spread that. Thank you.